What I need to do now is to be able to prove to management that that investment worked.
Yep.
So yes, the money that we've spent on that project was worth putting in there. But also, what about managing, well, not managing my users, but monitoring them, making sure that they're getting the right end user experience, but also when they get problems. So if usual one, users phoning up and saying it's slow for me to log in.
Yep.
Is there anything that you can do to help sort of ongoing maintenance and monitoring of that?
Absolutely, and that's a really good question and a really valid point, particularly when you're deploying something like this. So if we go to the next slide, we're back to our friend Stratusphere UX. So Stratusphere UX started the project, and if you remember, we did this baseline of Fred's environment as to what he's got now, what he's dealing with, so he can go and make those decisions. And as he's just described, he now needs to find out, have I done that? Have I achieved what I set out to achieve? Are management going to be happy? And it's ultimately the user's going to be happy. Now, we live in an ideal world; they'll all be happy, but things go wrong. But it's how do I pick those up quickly and fix them that doesn't affect them in any great way. So if we go to the next slide, and we talk a little bit more about Stratusphere UX in a monitoring capacity now, what it's going to give you is this ongoing proactive monitoring. So it's going to tell me the user experience on a daily basis, on an hourly basis, go down to a minutely basis if you really want to, if there's a particular issue. And hopefully, with the analysis that we're doing, is tell you something that's going to happen before the user picks up the phone and says, I can't log in. But typically, and I can't speak to all users, but you'll get the user phone the help desk and go, my desktop is slow. ... Fill in the blanks. Where do you start? What does slow mean? Did it take ages to log in? Is it just doing something in an application that's really slow? What does slow mean? And often, the users, bless them, can't really explain it. Well, that's quite simple. You just pop onto the Stratusphere console. You can search by their username. You can search by their machine name, and you can quickly identify their machine, their session, or which machines they've logged into. Because often they might go and log into another machine and say it's slow. It's like, okay, there's something with the user there. Or maybe it's changed on a different machine, but what? So I'll be able to see quite quickly, and if you can just kind of make out on the graphic at the bottom there, there's some red boxes and some green boxes and some yellow boxes. So it's the traditional red, amber, green. Red is what I'm looking for. So in this case, I could look there and go, actually, Mr. User, there's some disk I/O activity going on here. And that's what's out of scope and possibly causing you to slow down. But not only that, it's like, well, what's causing that disk activity? What is it? So we could trace that back and find at maybe 11 o'clock they launched something and it was some kind of scanning thing, or they did a search on their hard drive. We can see that level of detail. Or it might be something like we'll be able to spot that at the same time the disk I/O occurred, I can track at that specific point in time that also there's a lot of paging going on, which is driving high I/O. What drives paging? Well, that's memory. Oh, okay, you haven't got enough memory in that machine, or the application is consuming too much memory and became unresponsive. I can go to that level of detail. But also I can check back and say, well, did you have this in your previous environment? And if they didn't, then maybe there's some sizing things that weren't quite right when you move to a VDI environment. And we see that quite often, that you try and, with VDIs, is scale back on some of the resources, and often people scale back just a little too much, and it affects the user experience. But here I'm going to better tell you. And then also this what if scenario is, I can work out what's going on. If I add this application, it's going to take up this much more resource. Do I need to up the spec of the machine? And this works across all platforms. It doesn't matter if it's physical, whether it's virtual, or if it's running in the cloud. It runs on all of those platforms. So if we just go to the next slide, I think that just kind of summarizes what we've just talked about. It's that before and after the transformation process, understanding that user experience beforehand, going and implementing your projects, and then coming back and checking that you have delivered what you said you have delivered. And just to give you a bit more detail, just to show you some of the stuff you get out, if you go to the next slide and we talk about the diagnostic drill down elements, this is just literally a screenshot from Stratusphere, and we talked about getting to that root cause immediately. So here I can see a whole bunch of users. I can see their user experience score. They've either got A's or B's, and I can quickly see what's going on, how long they took to log in, how much CPU they're using, even down to the GPU. I can see what exactly is going on in that session, that desktop, that VDI machine. And it's another help desk role. I can see all of this stuff going on and react. Because typically some of these things might not actually affect the user straight away, or they might not see it. But you can go in there and proactively say, "Oh, hold on a minute, there's some faults there. Let me go in and fix those." And if you quickly look at the next slide as well, it's all about, and I've said it several times, it's all about putting the user first and this user first approach. And we want to define that experience, look what the users are doing, track them, where they're going, but also plot some of the trends so we can see actually some of these users are starting to use more resource. What's happened there? Why are they using more resource? Have they installed something I don't know about, which is a shadow IT question? But easily looking at that and then producing these reports for management around KPIs on user experience, which is actually becoming more important now, and present them in a traditional kind of block graph for the trending and analysis. And over time I can say this was this month, this was last month, that was 2 years ago, whatever. But also this Gartner type magic quadrant. We want all users in that top right corner. Anybody that falls out of there, and if you were on the console, I could click on those and I could find out why they've dropped down into the bottom right quadrant, and actually work out what I need to do to go and fix that. So just to wrap up on kind of the UX and the monitoring thing, on the next slide, it's just again looking at those top use cases. It's the ability to support physical and virtual workloads in a single pane of glass. Yes, it's one management console that's highly scalable to tens of thousands of machines within an environment. Whether they're virtual, physical, Citrix, VMware, Amazon, don't really care. It's Windows that we care about. So Windows operating system, server and desktop. And hopefully, from your project, Fred, that's going to help you understand your environment going forward. And then, we're back into that whole life cycle thing again. Times change, new operating system, new applications, use UX to monitor that. Machines going end of life. We can track, if you've got a 5-year refresh cycle on a desktop, I can tell you when that 5 years is up. I could tell you the age of those machines, so you know that, okay, next month these 10 machines are going to need renewing, and things like that. So how does that work for you, Fred?
That's excellent. I mean, it addresses the age-old question that we get time and time again on the help desk, or comment, shall I say, because generally there's not a lot you can do about it, of, oh, when I tried to log in yesterday or last week or last night, it was really slow. It took 15 minutes to log in. And it's like, well, how do you diagnose that? Well, from what I can see here with this, I can just go back in and dig back in time and find out exactly what was happening at that point, and then be able to work on that. So, yeah, I mean, that seems almost too good to be true, should we say. So